Hi, everybody. Welcome to the NRJ podcast. My name is Nick.
I'm Jackson.
And I'm Renee.
We all decided to come together and talk about some of the movie topics that we want to talk about in 2019. And just to give us a little intro into who we are, my name is Nick. Again, I am a local videographer in the CU area. And just very, very excited, just a passionate movie lover. Yeah.
Jackson Bird. I am also a movie lover. I used to have a little TV show called Real Retro, talk about really old movies, and it's exciting to talk about current events and movies and all sorts of wonderful things about film.
Hi, I'm Renee. I'm an undergrad student. I don't know. It's not as impressive as the other two. Yeah, I've loved movies like my whole life. So this is going to be fun.
Still very impressive, don't worry.
No.
Very impressive.
Undergrad.
But yeah, we're all three very, very excited to be here. And today we're going to talk about with Oscar season coming up. Maybe it's already around the corner with when this is being released. We decided to talk about our Oscar snubs, our biggest Oscar snubs of all time. And I think we wanted to go with maybe Jackson here first with a couple of Oscar snubs. What do you think, Jackson?
I think for this year, one that was overlooked was the documentary "Won't You Be My Neighbor?" I think that should have been on the list. In the past, documentary films have always been kind of a hit and miss with me. There's been some great films back in the 90s. There was Hoop Dreams.
Yep.
Didn't even make the list. Roger Ebert had it as his best film ever for that year, and he thought it should have been best picture overall.
I think it's on his top 10 list.
Top 10 list. Didn't even make it on the documentary list. And since then, they've kind of changed some of the selection for documentaries. But again, it's like, how did Won't You Be My Neighbor? How did that get overlooked this year?
I think it was the most talked documentary.
Yeah.
People talked about that documentary the most out of any other movie this year.
Yeah.
Is it 5 still for the amount of films that they let into that?
For the documentary, yeah. For this year, 2019, the ones that they have are Free Solo, Hell County, Minding the Gap of Fathers and Sons, and RBJ, which is also a great documentary. But maybe they could expand it. Add a 6th one. Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah. I think so. I think. I haven't seen the new Mr. Rogers movie, but I just heard all the hype around it, and I'm very excited for the Tom Hanks version. Well, what do we think about another Oscar snub?
Again, for this year, if we're going to talk, the Oscars coming up for 2019, a lot of folks have been questioning why Bradley Cooper wasn't on the director list. They thought that was kind of a snub, and because he was snubbed as director, my prediction is he's probably going to get the best actor because the Academy is going like, hey, he should have been on the best director. Let's make this up. And so
they also pay attention to a lot of like the winners, like that have won like Golden Globes, Critics' Choice Awards, and I think that's been Christian Bale for the Dick Cheney movie. Or Rami Malek for Bohemian Rhapsody.
That was the thing with Mr. Rogers, was that it won a bunch of those like leading up awards, so they were like, of course it'll get the Oscar nomination. And the fact that it didn't even get the nomination is kind of crazy.
I don't know, yeah. And Bradley Cooper's still really young, too, is another thing.
In his 30s.
But there's, I didn't know that he wasn't going to get the Best Director now, so maybe that will be the case. I don't know. One of the big snubs for me for the Oscars was in 2008 with Dark Knight. I thought that was sort of one of the biggest snubs because the Reader, which I don't know if you guys have seen it, it's not that
it's very
interesting.
Boring.
It's very boring. It's I don't think anybody remembers it 10 years later, and I can guarantee you that more people remember Dark Knight than The Reader. Slumdog Millionaire won that year, I'll give it to you. That's a pretty good movie. Milk you know, it was a pretty solid movie. Curious Case of Benjamin Button still holds up pretty well. And then Frost Nixon, which is a really good, fast-paced, sort of intense
Political
movie.
Yeah.
But that, like you said, Jackson, is a lot, you know, they should maybe expand, which is what happened. Dark Knight made the Best Picture nominations to 10. And so now a lot of, you know, you could argue, is it a little bit more diluted now? It's a little bit more like, I don't know if that was a Best Picture nomination. Like, I loved Black Panther. I think it was a great, you know, adaptation. It was like the most popular movie of the past year, but I'm not sure if it was a Best Picture nomination. It compared to the past, where it was like had to beat out all the other movies for 5 spots. I'm not sure if it's up there, but now it has one. It's, you know, that's a fact because of The Dark Knight. So it's that's one of my biggest sort of flubs.
I think one from this year that got overlooked quite a bit, because I watched it, I think the other night, was Hereditary, because that movie it's intense, it's a lot, and I think the main actress, Toni Collette, should have gotten nominated. I heard, like, people were saying, oh, she got snubbed, so then I watched it, and then I actually saw, like, how amazing her performance was, and I was like, absolutely, she should have been nominated, and I don't know, we talked about this before, we think horror movies get kind of overlooked.
That's right.
At the Oscars.
That's right.
Not only do they get overlooked, the timing. I mean, this film came out last, you know, spring or, you know, early summer, something like that.
That's why Wes Anderson didn't get nominated either, because his stuff usually comes out in March and stuff.
Yeah.
I think Grand Budapest Hotel was sort of his most nominated one. But yeah, I agree. Horror films, I think it's really only The Exorcist, and Silence of the Lambs, really, but you couldn't really classify Silence of the Lambs as a horror. More of a thriller. Yeah, I just don't really know what other sorts of horror movies that have been nominated like that. So it's very interesting. And I think timing specific to maybe the decades that they were kind of in was sort of about that too. Was, you know, early 2000s, Lord of the Rings was very dominant in the Oscars. Yeah. You know, Chicago won, and like that's a musical. Unforgiven won in the 90s. It's a Western sort of thing, and it's just sort of interesting the genres they let in to Oscar nominations. Mm-hmm.
And not only horror films, but comedies. You know, you want to talk about snubs. Cary Grant, probably one of the best actors ever. I think he was nominated, but he never won. He got one of those honorary awards, right. You know, but that's like, you know, psychology. You know, it's like it's like he only did comedies, but
it's like a career tribute. You know, one of those kind of things. I think Alfred Hitchcock got one of those. Charlie Chaplin got one of those too, which is sort of a nice thing to give.
Yeah,
he did great. Sorry we didn't give you one earlier. One of those kind of things. Yeah. But comedies. I mean, you could go down a list of ones that, besides like Annie Hall. How long ago was that? I
77.
77, right? Same year as Star Wars. But yeah, no, I think that's a big snub. And I think you were also talking about Spike Lee.
Yeah, just Spike Lee in general, his whole career.
His whole
just
thing.
Been overlooked.
Just big snub.
Like, do the right thing, what a woman wants. Or, I think that's what it's called, yeah. And then, I mean, this year he's finally getting recognized, which is great, because from the parts I've seen of BlacKkKlansman, it's a really good movie.
Right.
But I haven't seen the full thing.
Right.
So.
It was on Obama's list for like his favorite films of the past year. And I think a lot of that too might have to be with the pool of people voting in the Oscars. I think a lot of people before were sort of maybe turned off by his aggressive film style. But at the same time, they would like nominate Quentin Tarantino a lot. It was a very similar.
Yeah, they're similar filmmakers. It's interesting. It's just I feel like Spike Lee's way more political. He's got messages about race and everything. So Quentin Tarantino's like the tamer version of
more tame,
Spike Lee,
white version,
more palatable.
Yeah. So I agree. Spike Lee deserves. Hopefully, he deserves a win.
I think he, again, getting back to what I was saying about with Bradley Cooper, I think Spike Lee will probably win Best Director Oscar because he's been overlooked. Do the Right Thing, when that came out, Hollywood didn't even want to acknowledge he was making films.
Right.
I think when one of the hosts that was presenting the awards for Best Picture made mention that Hollywood overlooked Do the Right Thing, people were booing that statement, you know. So from the 80s to now, it's come a long way. And yeah, Spike Lee has a very aggressive style, and his influence is still felt today.
Oh, yeah.
And he also introduced the power and impact of hip-hop rap music into filmmaking. At the time, hip-hop rap was still kind of in its infancy. We had artists making kind of political statement songs, you know, songs that had meaning and impact. And he included that into Do the Right Thing, where almost the hip-hop rap was a character in Do the Right Thing,
absolutely.
where that was a big part of that movie. So yeah, you want to think about what Spike Lee's done, and he's been overlooked. I think it's his time, and I think he's going to get Best Director for that.
Yeah, and I think it's just a good movie. Black Klansman was a really, really good movie. It was, you know, pretty politically charged, and that was an interesting point too, with how you say that, you know, hip hop's a character. I would also argue that, again, relating it to Quentin Tarantino, you want to talk about music and movies.
Yeah, he's been a big influence.
He's a huge. When he chooses a song, he chooses that song for that scene. He works very closely. His music's very, very, very important to Quentin Tarantino. And some of the most famous themes and songs in movies come from his, because of his stuff. So it's a very interesting sort of, you know, Quentin Tarantino's success versus Spike Lee's success. I don't think Quentin Tarantino's won either. I think he's won for screenplay, and he's a great writer, and so is Spike Lee. But director, I don't know if Quentin Tarantino's won, but I think he's been nominated before. Another snub for me, too, is an acting category one. Is Al Pacino, in Godfather Part 2. I think when you think about, okay, so what's Al Pacino's best performance?
That one.
People are going to say Godfather Part 2, you know, or maybe Dog Day Afternoon, Serpico, Scent of a Woman, which I thought was sort of that sympathy one. And yeah, I think the Art Carney won it, and not to knock him, but I think people sort of, it's one of those things that, like, the times, it's hard to guess. It's hard to guess which one's going to be the one that's most remembered, and I don't think maybe they were thinking about that.
Yeah.
Maybe that's into more consideration these days of, like, well, what's going to be the best choice down the road?
It's just like, if you see his performance in The Godfather Part 1 to Part 2, it's such a big leap in that character, and he really does it well.
Mm-hmm. And he is sort of like the glue of the movie, you know. Him and De Niro just bounce off each other well without even sharing a scene. So yeah, I think it's just an absolutely wonderful performance, and he's so chill, he's so subtle about everything in that movie, you know. That's another one of my big snubs.
I think another one that's kind of recent is the Lego Movie that never got nominated.
That's right.
There's just an issue with, like, the best animated feature. It's always going to be the Disney movie, which really sucks because.
Well, now Spider-Verse.
Yeah, I really want Spider-Verse.
I really want. I think it might. I think it's got a lot of fan push. It's a very creative movie. It's very well written. I'm pushing for Spider-Verse. I think it's.
As someone who grew up, like, loving Disney movies, none of the ones this year really deserve to win.
You know, I think that's another, you know, episode is just sort of talking about, like, Disney's influence in terms of it's buying everything, and if it buys, I think Fox, it has 40% of all movie companies now.
It has so many. No.
So it's become just this giant monopoly of things. So.
It's like this giant monster looming over the film
industry. I know, but, like, in a, you know, cool, sort of friendly way that's sort of like
Mickey Mouse,
you know, new Star Wars movies, you know, like, and I hate to admit it, you know, I'm a big Star Wars fan, but, you know, I just these new ones that come out, I'm just not.
They don't feel as cohesive as the original three. Yeah. It doesn't feel like a trilogy. It just feels like separate little things.
Yeah, it just feels like it's designed to sell toys even more so than the prequels, you know. So I'm not a big fan of that. But sorry to derail from the big Oscar snubs, but, you know, there's some other stuff going on. I think Jackson had another one about Blade Runner.
Yeah, I think Blade Runner, classic sci-fi film now.
Oh, yeah.
When it came out in 1982, it was a commercial flop.
Right.
And people are like, what's this movie about?
Weird ending.
Yeah, weird ending. It's like, what does it all mean? Ridley Scott wasn't nominated for Best Director, and he was like maybe the third or fourth person on the list that had dibs on doing this film,
Right.
which is based on a sci-fi short story.
Sheep sleep.
Do androids dream?
Android's Dream of
Okay,
Electric
Dick.
Sheep.
Yeah.
And so Ridley Scott took this and created this wonderful, visually pleasing, innovative film. And Blade Runner in '82 was only nominated for 2 Oscars, and one was for the art direction, set decoration, and the other Oscar was visual effects. And it's the visual effects one that it didn't win. It lost in both of these categories.
Yeah.
And to me, the thing that I'm always go back is the visual effects in Blade Runner are light years ahead of things that were coming out in '82. And what won that year was E.T. the Extraterrestrial, and it's a great movie. I love it. It's a good movie. It's a
perfectly
good
fine.
film. But I'm going like, okay, Elliot and E.T. riding their bike across the moon.
I think that's
versus,
literally the only part where like they had like CGI in it.
Yeah, it's just
you
a
know?
puppet.
It's just a puppet, you know.
versus all the things that Blade Runner had.
Oh.
And the set decoration, Blade Runner lost to Gandhi.
Oh.
And it's another one of those films that's like, at the time, it's like, oh, wow, this is,
Epic, all that
epic.
sort of thing,
and,
you know.
But you think about the movie, it's like, what do I remember about that movie?
Not much. Daniel
Not much.
Day-Lewis's first sort of supporting role in that movie.
Daniel Day-Lewis is in Gandhi.
Oh yeah, he's like a guy that harasses him with like his little British gang at the beginning of it. It's like 2 minutes.
I just think of Ben Kingsley with like slightly darkened skin.
Yeah. That's sort of what we kind of think about it that now. But Blade Runner, I mean, it's just one of those movies now that you sort of say and
You
everybody's
still
sort
see
of
its
like,
influence.
oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think it just, like you said, Jackson, I think it just merges 2 genres perfectly. Sci-fi and noir, just beautifully. And it's always raining, it's always like, just this
Murky environment.
I think when you were talking about music as a character, that tone visually is a character. I think just the whole space of that movie is just such a cool thing.
You have like the noir settings with like the futuristic. It's
So
really
cool.
cool. It's really.
And I think there's a
innovative.
bit of sort of Eastern influence in terms of some of this stuff. In terms of like when he's buying there, when he's on the streets, there's just sort of more lights hitting him and there's like some more advertisements than usual. And it's sort of a reflection on where sort of where we're at right now, where you just walk down the street and there's just advertisements hitting you everywhere you go. So yeah, I think Blade Runner is just one of those big steps
And
too.
it could have been nominated for more categories. Cinematography, it could have been nominated there. Like I said, Ridley Scott should have been nominated for Best Director there, but the 2 nominations that it did receive lost, and the one that I really felt that it was snubbed was the visual effects.
Screenplay too. I think it's a great screenplay.
Yeah.
I think it's just a wonderful, wonderful story. But yeah, I mean, I think that Blade Runner is just one of those big ones. And one of the ones that I just thought of when we were talking about that was 1998, Best Picture, the Saving Private Ryan. It didn't win.
It didn't win?
Shakespeare in Love won.
Oh no.
You know what I mean? Like, Saving Private Ryan is just, when you think of a war movie recently, that one and Band of Brothers are sort of the first ones that you think about. And I think Tom Hanks didn't win that year either. It was just sort of one of those ones that was just sort of filler into the categories and it didn't really win anything. So I think that's a big snub too, because I think that when you want to talk about great openings in film, that
Saving
opening
Private
sequence is just one of the best opening
Shakespeare
sequences.
in Love. I just saw a meme about Shakespeare in Love because
Really?
Ben Affleck's in it, I guess.
Oh,
and it's
really?
Like, Ben Affleck shouldn't be in period pieces because his face looks like it knows what cell phones are. Yeah, it's kind of right.
It kind of does. And
Yeah.
then, I don't know. When someone's Batman, I can't be like, you're not Batman to me. Like,
Yeah, so
except
now
George
we're watching
Clooney.
stuff.
I can kind of be like, okay, it's George Clooney, and whatever. But if you're Batman to me, you're just always
You're
Batman. Or maybe Val Kilmer too, because maybe he was like, because he played the Doors lead singer. But I mean, yeah, Ben Affleck is just always gonna be Batman to me, or Christian Bale, or Adam West, or whoever. But
I think that's what made Birdman work. Was that you look at Michael Keaton
Right.
and you think Batman.
right, yeah, I think this is an unpopular opinion, but I think Michael Keaton's the best Bruce Wayne and Christian Bale's the best Batman. I don't know. That's
interesting. Yeah.
Because I think I like the voice that he does. Everything goes back to Dark Knight for me, but I think I like the voice that he does because when you think about it, he's like as famous as Jeff Bezos. He's like he's got so much money. People know who he is. He has to disguise his voice in some way, and what sounds better? I'm Batman versus I'm Batman. Like that's you know what I mean. Like sometimes you can't understand him. It's like Bane.
Bane
the
is
third
just...
one. You just can't understand him. You have to subtitles with him, but. I think just the voice of Christian Bale and Batman. Again, derailed it. I apologize. I love derailing and film and stuff like that. But do you guys have any more snubs or anything like that?
More snubs? I'm not sure if it's necessarily snub because I don't know if he got nominated. But Steve McQueen, who directed 12 Years a Slave, he directed 2 really good movies before that. That I don't think are as well known, so they might not have been even nominated. But the one I'm thinking of is Hunger.
Hunger
is the one that's like
Michael Fassbender.
Yeah, that one's insane.
Yeah,
that's a lot.
Isn't it mostly just one scene, like one
it's
sort of?
It's just
space?
like watching him like deteriorate. It's just and it's a ride.
That's a harrowing kind of. Well, Renee, you were talking to me about Apocalypse Now, too. That's one of your favorite.
No, that's one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, it's going to kind of bleed into another episode. Sorry about that, but I don't think that one really won that much either.
I think the only thing it might have won might have been rejected by its winner, which was Marlon Brando.
Oh, no, yeah. See, when he rejected that was for Godfather.
That was for Godfather. But Robert Duvall.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, did he win for Apocalypse Now?
For Best Supporting.
Oh, that's what he won for. Yeah.
The whole smell of napalm speech, and you can't beat that one.
That's good.
But yeah, I mean, you look at Francis Ford Coppola. I mean, the guy that did the Godfather films. We'll forgive him for Godfather Part 3, but
the conversation.
Every filmmaker's got one.
Yeah, it's another film that you look at the performances, everyone in there, and the cinematography, how we have night scenes that are incredible, jungle scenes that are incredible. Everything is incredible.
And once you know the story of it too, I mean the documentary made
the
about
documentary
it is ridiculous. It just everybody was just on the verge.
Everyone was on the verge of dying making that movie.
So just knowing how hard and passionate about the project he was deserves something to me
because recognition.
Because a lot of times I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of times you'll see this thing sort of called Oscar bait, and you'll sort of be like, oh, this movie was sort of made for the Oscars, and it wasn't made to have a true impact, right? I have some of the ones that sort of come to my mind. Silver Linings Playbook a couple years ago, just sort of ones that are about getting over hurdles, but they're played by beautiful people. You know what I mean? That are just there just to get their nominations and then say, I won an Oscar, blah, blah, blah. Apocalypse Now seems completely the opposite.
Yeah, it's an actual, film.
Oh, yeah. It was based on this great book, Heart of Darkness, Joseph Conrad, and it's just, I think it's really one of those things that's I must make this thing. Otherwise, I don't know what I can do. And he had to tell that story, so that's a big snub for me, too.
Yeah. I'd be surprised if, I think his name's John Milius, who wrote the film, if he didn't get nominated, because that's a really good screenplay.
Really, really good screenplay. And with one of the most famous quotes of all time, which Jackson, I think, said better than all of us.
Yeah.
If you wouldn't mind, if I can set the tone with some sound effects here. Apocalypse Now, the
napalm.
I can't do it now.
Too much pressure.
On command, I put Jackson too much on there.
My mind froze up there. But the smell of napalm, smell of victory. No, I'm butchering it. I'm sorry.
Oh no, what is it? No, it's.
I love the smell of napalm in the morning. Smells of victory.
Yes.
So I had to clear the mind,
Oh, I'll edit that out.
Clear the mind there. But I don't know. Maybe this is almost blasphemy for saying it, but sometimes you have to wonder about is the Oscars, how relevant is the Oscar awards? Because we're talking about snubs, films that people remember 30 years later, like Blade Runner. We remember Blade Runner. out
It's
of
just
Africa.
not our opinion. It's
he's
like
like,
consensus. That's
you know,
a great
like
film.
out of Africa. It's like, let's see, it was Robert Redford and Meryl Streep in Africa.
Oh yeah,
and Citizen Kane.
Oh yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah. Big
Pro,
one.
you know,
Big one.
you know, on the top 5 list of pretty much everyone as best film.
Oh, yeah.
How Green Is My Valley? It's like, does anyone remember?
No.
John Ford, director, great director, but you have that, and then you have some, you know, so many of these other films. I believe he won for screenplay.
Oh, okay.
Orson Welles back in the 40s when he was doing Citizen Kane was sort of like Spike Lee. Hollywood hated him.
Yeah.
Hollywood did not like this young upstart.
I think the world didn't like him. I mean,
Yeah,
the
no,
Mars
yeah.
thing, you know, that whole
and,
thing.
you know, and after that, after the studios let him make this movie the way he wanted, the studios always interfered in every single film that he did afterward. The Magnificent Ambersons, the Shanghai, the one with his wife Rita Hayworth at the time.
Did they do that in Third Man too? Or?
Third, no, that was Third Man was Carol Reed, I believe. But
Oh, he just started it. They didn't break it.
but
Which noir movie did he do with?
Charlton Heston.
Yeah.
It was a border. What was that?
What was that one called? Ooh, it has like a really great opening too.
Something evil.
Touch of Evil.
Touch of
Touch
Evil.
Evil.
Touch of
Yeah.
Evil. Another
That's a
film
great
that, you know, the studio
Messed with a lot.
messed with a lot, and they threw away. You know, they did all these edits, and they didn't want him to do anything later. And they threw away all those.
Well, yeah.
I think
But-
they just released a documentary about him, about Orson Welles and how, like, his filmmaking process changed, and how, like, what happened after.
You want to talk about
Citizen Kane.
innovations
Yeah.
to the art form. I mean, that's
That's
probably
the
where
main
we wanted to go.
one.
He's in Citizen Kane alone. I think you can come up with every scene. There was an innovation, in some regard. I mean, and again, that's one of those things where they just look at it and are sort of like, well, we don't know what it is right now. And same with 2001. You know,
Stanley Kubrick's another great example. It's like
Yeah.
a lot of his films. Alfred Hitchcock, a lot of his films. You look at what was nominated and won compared to some of those directors. It's like, what movie is that? You know, it shows up on some trivia game now.
Yeah,
It's like,
right,
what
right,
film
right.
won in 1952? And
you would think it would be this one, but it's not.
Yeah.
You know, one of those things. Yeah. And so that's a good question, Jackson. It's just sort of like, how much trust should we give
To the Oscars.
To the Oscars these days? I don't know, because obviously they're in the field, they know the business, they know everything that comes with it, and they're part of it. But a lot of the times they miss the mark. You know, just telling the truth that, you know, it's maybe the best picture for that year. Maybe that's what the definition of it should be. Is like that year, at that time.
We thought it was this.
We thought it was this.
Yeah.
Maybe they should go back and maybe fix it. You know, Citizen
Go
Kane should
back
win.
to-
Yeah, maybe we should kind of rethink that one. Yeah, but I think this too is a lot of those directors' movies, Alfred Hitchcock and Kubrick in particular, were very, I don't want to say without compassion, but they were a lot of not traditional Hollywood sort of ways of explaining a character. In terms of, you know, Hitchcock, Rear Windows, very weird people were in that movie. And also Clockwork Orange, very weird people were in the movie. Very non-sympathetic characters are in those movies. And so I think a lot of the time Oscars will sort of go to those more Oscar bait sort of movies that are more uplifting, more overcoming challenges and sort of things like that, or historical pieces for some reason. One of the ones that I think is actually really, really good when Amadeus. It's just one of my favorite movies. One, just because I think it was just one of those set piece ones that was just very, very epic, and had a great leading performance by F. Murray Abraham. I don't know. I think that's just a really, really good question to ask. Is like, how much validity should we give to the Oscars these days? And I think you're starting to see more people sort of say, you know, I don't really watch the Oscars that much. It's just a cash grab. It's dropping off a bit, you know. So, and with the internet these days, everybody can watch whatever they want at any time, anywhere, and you can. I don't know how it was back in the day, Jackson, where it was just sort of like you saw what was in theaters and you would wait for VHSs to come out. Now you can watch any movie at any time for like $3.99 or $8.99 a month, and so you can choose which movies are best and sort of choose. Okay, well, Oscars got it wrong that year, and Oscars got it right that year, so everybody sort of has their opinion on it these days. So it's just interesting. Anybody else have any more snubs?
I think a recent one for me was last year, Best Song. I think the song from Coco won, and this was like after, because they like perform the songs like throughout the ceremony, and it was a very bad performance by Gael Garcia Bernal of the song, and you're just like, wow, that really puts a bad taste in your mouth when you think of the song. And then it won against I'm gonna butcher his name, Sufjan Stevens. His song for Call Me By Your Name is a really beautiful song.
I think so too, and that I saw that movie Call Me By Your Name, and I wasn't a big fan of the whole movie.
Yeah.
I think Moonlight sort of illustrated some points of that movie better than
I
Call
agree
Me
with
By
that.
Your Name. But I will agree that the Sufjan Jackson Stevens, those songs and the sequences with those songs were just very, very, very moving, and some of the best parts of that movie, and I agree.
Speaking of music, that kind of brings to pops in my head here another snub. 1977, best song, best score, Saturday Night Fever.
Not Star Wars.
Bee Gees, best-selling soundtrack for a movie ever.
Right.
Disco. Not a lot of people were fans of disco, but you think of all the songs that were in Saturday Night Fever.
Yeah.
Again, talking about music being a character in that movie that played a crucial part of that movie. Mm-hmm. Everyone remembers the dance scene of John Travolta. Everyone remembers John Travolta walking down the sidewalk in the morning.
You take those scenes out of that movie. It's not the same movie.
It's not the same movie. Mm-hmm. And the best song for that year was "You Light Up My Life."
Oh no! Which
Debbie
was like
Boone,
one of the most famous songs of that.
Yeah, it was. Debbie Boone sang it. It was on the radio nonstop. Yeah. And the movie
kind of like Uptown Funk these days.
Yeah. And it's like, and the movie was terrible. It was one of those bad movies, but it won Best Song of the Year. Yeah. Compare that to the staying power of the songs that the Bee Gees did for Saturday Night Live.
And I think just Bee Gees in general they made great songs for that movie. And was that the same year as Star Wars? I think.
Star Wars. I think maybe Star Wars, the score for that. You were talking earlier about Disney films.
Yeah.
I think also that year, You Light Up My Life, and like maybe 2 or 3 other songs for Best Song were Disney film songs. So it's again, it's like, I like Disney films, but are they the best?
Disney has a bunch of song Oscar nominations just because they're there.
Necessarily all of them deserve to win if they got one.
No, I think maybe like Circle of Life and like Elton John, Lion King, Aladdin, maybe one of those, The Whole New World or something like that would have won. But
what was even a Disney movie from the 70s? All I can think of is like Aristocats, which
70s. Wow. Yeah, I don't know.
I think they had that live action animated Pete's Dragon. I think 1 or 2 of those songs were nominated for.
Wow. What about 80s for Disney movies? I can't.
Oh, Oliver and Company.
Oliver and Company.
Billy Joel was a good one.
All Dogs Go to Heaven or something like that.
I think that was like a rival company.
Oh yeah. And well, I think Little Mermaid was right at the tail end
and that was the kickoff for the 90s. That's the kickoff
that sort of led to everything that led for the next decade. I think too. I don't think another snub.
we could
go on this all day. I think Will Smith. I don't think Will Smith has won. And I think honestly, Pursuit of Happiness. I think
that's an intense performance.
I think
he got nominated for the
Ali.
Concussion movie.
Concussion movie.
But he was also nominated for Muhammad Ali.
That's a good one.
Yeah, and he did that too. And that's sort of the role that you sort of think about when it's like, okay, Oscar-y movie. That's one. And then that and Pursuit of Happiness. I think he should have won any of those years. 2006 was a sort of a weak year. I think Forrest Whitaker won for Last King of Scotland.
Oh, that was a good one.
It's good.
I think that one you knew who was gonna win though. Like if he would have not won, that would have been kind of.
Yeah. So I just think Will Smith's too powerful as an actor, too good as a person not to get it. You know, I think when you think of somebody who ruled the '90s, it was like him, Tom Hanks, Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt. You know, Julia Roberts in the '90s. You know, I think that was just one of the bigger snubs that I can sort of think of. Yeah, I don't know. I think. Snubs are everywhere.
Yeah, they are.
And a lot of it's opinion. But a lot of it's like we were talking about with Blade Runner. These classic movies, they're just overlooked. So call your Oscar snub hotline.
Yeah, and complain for 2 hours.
We're open 24 hours and awaiting your call. But I think that's a good place to sort of end. Hopefully we've sort of excited your imagination about Oscar snubs. What sort of Oscar snubs do you guys have for us, and maybe something we missed? This has been NRJ podcast, the very first one. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you later.